Hello and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. I have a couple of quick announcements before we bring on today's guest. First is our Innovators Summit of this year coming up in December. Tickets for that are officially available, so make sure that you grab yours using the QR code or the chat. And we also have our May Symposium tomorrow, so make sure that you grab your tickets for that. It's going to be a really great event. And so with that, I would like to formally introduce today's guest, Rachel Bryars, who is a Senior Executive Communications Consultant here at HITLAB. So thankful for having you on, Rachel. Thanks so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nina. This is just such a pleasure to join you and excited to chat a little bit today.
Yes, absolutely. And love having, one of HITLAB's own also being able to share your perspective and all of your insights with us too. Awesome. Perfect. I think maybe a great way to kind of kick us off, Rachel, is if you could share a little bit more about really your journey and kind of what has inspired you to pursue this career in communications and where you are right now.
Oh, thank you.
It's a very loaded question.
Oh, great question. I love kind of thinking back in the Wayback Machine to how I started out. So when I was younger, picture a fifth grader typing on a typewriter. Literally, I know I'm making myself sound very old, but my parents had a typewriter and I was banging out fifth graders in the USA Today, just trying to come up with a little newspaper for my fifth grade class because it just felt like heaven to me to interview other people, ask about their stories, and be a reporter. So that was always the dream, was to be a reporter. So went to school, studied to be a journalist, and my first job out of college was to be a live news reporter. I was very low on the totem pole, so I was the morning live reporter for a TV station up in Richmond, Virginia. So I would get to the station at 3 o'clock in the morning and get my stories prepared for the day and go out and do this thing. But my dream of asking questions and getting to the heart of the issue and really listening and writing these stories, while I loved that aspect of it, Nina, I'll tell you what I didn't love, and it's kind of, it helps me bridge to where I am today. As a reporter, part of the ethics that you sign up for, and it's very important, your client, if you will, your audience, the people you have to be loyal to are the readers, not the person you're interviewing. You are getting to the heart of the truth. That's what a journalist wants to do, to share to those who deserve to know the truth. And so I was finding that what I loved to do most of all, ask questions and understand where someone was coming from. I started to realize as I was getting into more and more difficult stories, be that crime or government issues, that the people I was developing rapport with while I was asking questions and interviewing might be very disappointed when the story came out, because again, I had to share from an ethics perspective the truth. And I couldn't be their friend. I couldn't, I always tried to be very fair, but that was painful. Just to be frank, that was a very painful delicate balance to strike of how can I be very fair to the person interviewing and how can I do justice to my job. And so fast forward, and I had a wonderful opportunity to write for the Washington Post, the Washington Examiner, report live and do all of the things across broadcast and print. But at some point I just kind of got burnt out from having to navigate that internal struggle. Right. And I realized there's this whole other world of communications. There's PR, there's corporate communications, there's all of these other places where bringing those skills to bear that I learned in my journalism days still were so appropriate and still able to add value. So I had my own corporate training and consulting firm for a long time, and loved my clients in that in that world, and then transition into a vice president of marketing and communications role for a professional services corporation. So kind of ran that whole gamut. And now what I get to do, and again, I just feel like it keeps evolving and getting better and better. So I just, knock on my wood desk here. I just love what I get to do now, is really work with people who feel that for whatever reason, maybe they are so talented at what they do, but communication is keeping them from some significant goals. And that could be maybe it's a team who they have a major merger and acquisition opportunity, but they just can't negotiate because of the personalities that are at the table. Right. Or there's employee situations that you just have to be so delicate, or this whole thing might erupt. Or perhaps it's someone who they deserve a promotion. It's time for them to break that glass ceiling, but they keep getting overlooked and told in their feedback that they lack executive presence or some such. That is my favorite thing of all to do, where we can look at all these great people and all these great ideas and say, there's a communication problem. Let's solve that. And so that's where I get to plug in. That's a long answer, but
that's amazing. I love it though, because I mean, number one, it's so funny how even as a fifth grader, you had this idea of what you like to do and what you're so passionate about from the beginning, which I think is so exciting. But I think when you were speaking of that balance that you had to strike between, the relationship, the rapport, and also kind of the ethical component of it, I thought that was so fascinating. And I think I never really thought about that from like the journalism perspective, for those that you see like on the news, what that looks like. So I think that was just really insightful for me to understand and peek behind the curtain a little bit of, what it takes to be able to break these stories. So I think that was just really, really insightful to learn more about. But I also really love this progression that you've had, where you're really just continuing to poke around and learn these different aspects of what it means to excel in a communication space. And I think on that note, some of the things that you were mentioning, kind of what you do right now, and really the wide array of kind of problems that you're solving on behalf of your clients. Would love if you could just kind of describe for us what is like a typical day in the life of, a senior executive communications consultant. What does that kind of look like?
I love that. So I'd say, I think we've all read the news articles about, you shouldn't multitask, right? It doesn't work. It's not productive. So I've tried to think of it in terms of, maybe it's cliche, but putting on the different hats one at a time. And so I feel like if I can look at my day and say, all right, maybe there's 3 or 4 roles here, but it's not a mismatch. We're going to put on one role, do that well, or at least this is the hope. This is the goal. Put on the hat, do the one thing well, and then transition. So I would say that falls into, I guess maybe 4 buckets then. So there's the executive coaching piece that we talked about a little bit. And that's probably my favorite, Nina. So that's really meeting one-on-one with someone, listening and understanding, here's where you are, here's where you really want to be. Let's bridge that gap through awareness. Let's talk about what you see as roadblocks. So in that role, it's interesting because I've never really loved the word coaching to describe executive coaching, because I think we all just think of someone rah-rah and they're doing a lot of
cheerleader, yeah.
But I think it's just the wrong word for it, because I think if you're truly coaching, you aren't doing a lot of talking at all, because somebody has the answers within, and it's just your job to help them find those answers. I certainly don't have the answers that someone else can bring because they know their situation, but oftentimes it just takes those incisive questions to get someone to realize that they have the answer. So that's my favorite thing. And then the communication consulting piece is a lot of fun too, where sometimes we'll work with an organization. Maybe they're startup, but maybe they're very established and they are just running and gunning all day, and they realize, hey, we don't even have mission, vision, and value statements. We've never paused. Maybe we got this thing going and it's 3 years in, we're doing fantastic, but we've never really stopped to define mission, vision, values. We don't have a communication plan. Maybe they're doing what I read this somewhere. It's not original, but I love it. The idea of random acts of communication or random acts of marketing.
I love that.
Yeah, like where you just, you're like, oh, I should put out a newsletter. Well, here's a random newsletter. I should do some marketing. Here's a random marketing ad, and it's just
so funny.
It's not cohesive. So what we'll do is we'll just get every key player in a room for a couple days, and at the end of that, they'll walk away with almost a front and back that they can tack up on their wall. Here's where we are going. Here's what we want to communicate. And here's just those messages we want to beat the drum on, because we've spent a little bit of time thinking about why those matter and how they map to our strategic objectives. So love doing that. And then negotiations is also a fun one. I think that's, you think about, I like to think of helping people craft messages when it matters most. And so when does it matter most? Often on the micro level, it might be a person navigating promotion or raise conversations. So, hey, that matters. That could be 3, 5, sometimes if you're really loyal, 10 plus years of a financial trajectory. So helping someone sit in that moment and do that well, negotiate that well, is so important. Or on the more of the macro level, corporations navigating those sticky issues well, because they're stuck with it once those papers are signed. And then lastly, I'll say the last role that, I like to say it doesn't, you don't wear 2 hats at once, but of course we know as women that you wear many hats at once. So I am a mother, I'm a wife and a mother of 5 children. And so all the sports and the cooking and the activities in the school is a significant piece. And I think that I love that post-COVID, I just love where we are as women, as people, that we are so much more open to just acknowledging, life and work they're not dual tracks, they're one track. And we can't bring our best selves to work without just acknowledging that reality and being kind to each other about navigating it. So there's the 4 roles.
I love that. I wholeheartedly agree with you, especially on that last part. I definitely feel like COVID really shed a lot of light on just burnout and really how your work-life balance is so important. I have so many questions for you, Rachel. I think the first one, as you were describing, those 4 buckets, I'm just really curious, what are some of the more rewarding aspects of your job as you are kind of wearing all of these different hats one at a time?
Oh boy, the most rewarding, I think in just a word would just be people. Just
Love
people.
That.
I mean, I think it's such a profound gift when we think about it. It's such a profound thing to be human, and that Nina has these things inside of her that the only way for me to really understand is for them to be drawn out of you, or for them to be communicated out to me. And I have things inside of me and gifts to bring that have to come out of me in some way, whether it's written or spoken or body language. And so just this profound opportunity as humans to connect and be those pieces of the puzzle for each other, to find that value that maybe would have been unmined if it were not for communication. It's just absolutely wonderful. I think back to, there's been some times over the past couple of decades where I've been able to maybe have a little bit of bandwidth, and I'll go teach at a university, just teach like public speaking, just the fundamental, a public speaking course. And I love it so much because it's a semester long shortcut to that joy of seeing somebody maybe come into the class thinking, you know what, I'm an introvert. I don't love speaking. I don't think I could be good at this. I have so much in my head, but I don't know how to get it out. and I'm terrible at it, So to see someone maybe like that come in on the front end and help them embrace a growth mindset, like, okay, let's throw this idea that you can't be a good speaker out the door. Like you can be great. And then see them do it. And by the end of it, often become the best speaker in the class. I think that's my sweet spot, is finding people who they undermine their value. They look across the sea of gregarious, charismatic folks who seem to just, it comes so easy. Communications is so easy, and they undervalue themselves, and helping them see that they can outshine those folks even by bringing their gifts to bear. And so, I think situations like that just remind me that it's just a profound joy to get to work on communication. I love it.
That's amazing. And even just the way that you talk about it, I mean, you're inspiring me a little bit, because that's absolutely so beautiful. And I definitely agree in terms of communication, almost as like a muscle that we all have. It just takes some practice sometimes to strengthen that muscle. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. One of the things that you had also mentioned is kind of a typical day in the life is kind of your executive coaching. I'm so curious, because I definitely feel like sometimes there is a perception around executive coaching of, you need to be at this particular level in order to, be worthy or to kind of qualify for executive coaching. But kind of question for you, what do you kind of see when it comes to executive coaching? How soon can you start to get it? Any insight around that, I think would be really interesting.
Oh, thank you. That's such a great question. I thoroughly agree, Nina. Why should it just be executives? Because if someone's really thinking about succession, if they're thinking about bringing along leaders, if we don't want our rising talent to get to the position where we need them because somebody left, and we're looking at the costs of what it would take to truly outsource and hire that person in, and we've got someone that, we didn't develop their executive presence, or we didn't develop their leadership abilities, or they're so great but they just don't get along with their peers. We can't. It's just so short-sighted. And so I think that if a company can invest in coaching, and drop the title executive, just rising talent coaching, or even peer coaching. I will say, I know there are some programs that do peer coaching, and so maybe they don't want to hire outside of the organization, or sometimes executive coaches can cost a lot. I think there's such value in peer coaching, but I would say it's worth investing in a true executive coach. So I have my ICF certification, and that's kind of the gold standard. I'm really proud of it because it's a hard program. And so I think that not doing a shortcut of kind of checking the box of, well, we do coaching, you guys add more time to your day, right? Go add more responsibilities to your plate to coach each other. Bringing a professional in is just really, really worth the investment. And I would also say to folks who maybe are offered the opportunity, so maybe your organization does resource you with some coaching, don't shy away from it. Don't let that coaching term kind of scare you to where you think, why, what is somebody going to tell me? Remember, it's a question-based environment. Just most coaches truly, truly, truly want to help you achieve your goals, want to help you get to a place that almost is like a skip step. We can all learn the hard lessons, but I think a lot of times we wake up 10 years later and we think, man, I wish I'd just been aware. I wish I'd just been aware of that thing I do that has prevented me from reaching my goals sooner. And I think that's what great coaching can do. But yes, Nina, I think anybody can benefit from it. And, truly, I think we can all benefit from, we don't have to go through the certification course. We don't have to become an official coach to learn a lot of the skills that provide such value to other people. So if we do have someone maybe a little bit behind us on the career ladder or ahead of us, we can add value to those above and below us by just embracing listening well, embracing asking questions that tap into our neuroscience a little bit, that get us to think deeper than just those. How are you? Getting to the heart of things can make you a super valuable team member to your executive team, even if you're not a coach.
Right. I love that. That's definitely a very great way of almost kind of like on the ground, getting some of those learnings. But yeah, that was so helpful. Because I definitely feel like there's a huge kind of component around coaching. There's a lot of interest, but exactly to your point, sometimes the particular nomenclature, how it's described, can detract people that would otherwise maybe want it or seek it out. So that was really, really helpful. Thank you, Rachel. Now I wanted to ask, I mean, as you have been describing your day in the life and all of the different types of things that you do and all the different types of clients that you have, for you, what are some of the bigger challenges that you face in your role, either when it comes to, specific, like whether it's an organizational thing that you're seeing, a cultural thing that you're seeing, or just, the typical day-to-day of juggling and wearing all of these different types of hats?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I said the most rewarding piece is people. I think the other side of that coin is the most challenging side is people. It's myself. It's other people. I think that I'll just think of some interesting negotiations that I'm in at the moment where the person can be so prepared. They've skilled up. They're ready to come to the table. But, you press one button and that's not a machine on the other side. That's another person. And so you don't push a button and the output is predicted. You might push the button and everything's back in the air and everything changes because you're coming with your insights and perspectives and emotions and baggage even. They're coming with the same, and we're often not even aware of all these things we're bringing to the table. And so it's just this ever moving dynamic. And so I think that makes it so interesting, but also just so challenging. And I think that we don't enough account for or give space for emotion in the workplace or in negotiations or team conflict. So again, tying it back to that idea of just humanity, and of course, Brene Brown, how wonderful she is to talk about, bringing your whole self to work. I think we all love that idea, and it just sounds so great. And then we're experiencing these strong emotions, and we usually react in our typical style. For me, I tend to be an avoider. I tend to just kind of stuff things down and I avoid it. And it can, if I'm not careful and if I'm not aware that I'm doing that, it's only going to fester. It's only going to be worse. I'm going to come up with some scenario that doesn't attack the problem. So I think we can all relate to that. And just having a plan for that, maybe even particularly as a woman, just to know, hey, I'm going to get in this situation and these are the players at the table. These are the power dynamics. Here's what I am going to tend to do if I am not aware. I'm going to tend to accommodate, or I'm going to tend to get upset and go silent. So let me really play it out, and let it start from a place of honoring the value that I have, honoring myself as an equal player at the table who has every right to my thoughts and emotions and perspective as the perhaps group that I'm intimidated by or something. You just think through whatever the situation is, and starting from that place of understanding your value and sitting with it, being comfortable with it, and then being able to look then across the table at someone who has the same value, the same emotions circling within them that may have nothing to do with you, and seeing that person, as challenging as it is for two people to to come to the table. So, I think it's such an interesting, but really important thing just to remember emotions are allowed. They're part of being human, and we can communicate well through emotions, but we shouldn't forget them.
That is so, so incredibly powerful. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think it's a good reminder that, business, the workplace, all of that is not transactional. It really is, humans, people coming together with their own particular perspectives, experiences, all of that. So I really like that you called that out. And something else that you said that I thought was really interesting is kind of the awareness of yourself and kind of how you tend to react, internalize specific things. I'm just so curious, how do you kind of go about learning that about yourself? Is that something that, coaching is helpful for? Is that, something where you are just, scenario playing? What are some steps that we all can take to really start to understand how we, how we communicate or maybe not communicate or maybe, internalize things?
Oh, I love that question. That's so great, Nina. I would recommend, I'm thinking of I like to pull books off the shelf that maybe they're old, but they're timeless. And so I'm thinking of the 1 Minute Negotiator that just kind of popped in my mind. And he says, think of like 4 categories of, let's just say, communication styles. I think he would call it negotiation styles, but, are you a competitor? Are you a avoider? Are you a accommodator, or are you a collaborator? Okay, so let me just kind of put those out there. So I think once you realize that maybe you don't know what you are, you're right that awareness is such the first step. So I would say start to, in your movements with people, and let me go back to that point, being one of those matters. Because if you're a competitor, you might be turning people off and you're not getting things done because of your style. If you're an avoider, if you're a accommodator, those are impactful. So I would say start in your movements about your day. When there's conflict that comes up, when there's something that you need to speak into, what is your go-to style? Do you immediately jump in and you're banging and clanging and then everyone goes silent and you're like, what happened? And maybe you're a competitor. Do you suddenly, you come up from the meeting and you realize you have taken on all the work? It was supposed to be a team project and somehow you're going to be up all night and everybody else is going on vacation. You might be an accommodator. And I think that is the first step, is awareness, and coaching can help. Coaching can help. You can ask a friend or someone who knows you well, say, hey, listen, I'm very open. What are some things I'm doing that you think may be getting in my way? Here's my goals, career-wise or otherwise. Here's my goals. I'm a human. I'm sure I'm doing things to get in my way. What do you see? And I just could go on and on about it, Nina, so I won't, because I know we probably have time limits. But once you are willing to let other people tell you what they see, because we just can't see ourselves. We just can't see ourselves the way others can.
That is amazing. And I do actually realize that we are at time. I think it just flew by, and you have definitely given me like a good homework to really uncover what my style is, and definitely urge everyone on the call that's interested to do that for themselves as well. But thank you so much, Rachel, for taking the time to chat with us today. It was so insightful. I feel like I learned a ton.
Oh, I just thank you so much for having me. And if anyone ever wants help, it would be my pleasure. Reach out to HITLAB and we would love to accommodate you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. Wanted to give one last quick reminder about our Innovation Summit coming up in December. Make sure you grab your tickets for that. We also have our May Symposium tomorrow. Please join us next week for next Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. Wanted to give one last shout out to our sponsors for sponsoring this conversation, as well as to our guest, Rachel, for such an incredible discussion. We will see you all next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.